Now I would like to request our chairperson, Dr. S.G. Ramkumar, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, School of Basic and Applied Science, Central University of Tamil Nadu, Thiruvarur, for the introduction of our speaker.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a very nice session on this Saturday. We had a very interesting session in the morning hours, and yet another interesting session to be given by Professor V.P. Sharma, who is the Chief Scientist, Professor, Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research, and Head Human Resource at CSIR Institute of Toxicology Research in Lucknow. Actually, he is a fellow of academic environmental biology, and his expertise is regulatory toxicology. He has served in the CSIR since 1987 and contributed significantly in getting several things organized in CSIR by getting several certificates like ISO 17025, ISO 9000, ISO 22000, and so on for good laboratory practices and organizational skills. Later, he also introduced many polymer-based, what's it called, suggestions for primary packaging of PET plastic, especially for the Indian pharmacopoeia. He has been served as a distinguished member in more than 25 academic societies. In addition to that, he also able to write book chapters for about 30 plus books with 90 plus reports. Meanwhile, during his stint in CSIR and other organizations, he could complete about 110 plus sponsored consultancy or granting aid projects. With a vast experience he has during his stint since 1987, it is our privilege to have him as a speaker today. He will be presenting today as a what is called related to one of the important topics in the seminar. So now may I request Professor Sharma to take over.
Are my slides visible to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Very much okay.
Very good morning to each one of you. At the onset, I would like to say that the wonderful deliberations have come up with the great efforts of UIT. And when I say UIT, it is Universal Intellectuals Trust. And if we break this into the components, I am closely linking universal to sustainability. And the first slide which I am showing here is very close to the sustainability approaches on which the core theme area of this conference has been centered. So I compliment the organizers for two things. Number one, giving me an opportunity to talk on innovative approaches for sustainable plastic and polymeric products and how I can learn from nature, and what the wonderful experts whom you have gathered here, including Dr. S.G. Ramkumar, Kanan, Ganesh Raja, Venkatraman, Dr. S.N. Jha, Sivananand, and Kamalakanan, and others who are attending this wonderful virtual conference on sustainable chemistry and renewable energy. Each of these words and the theme areas, when I was going through, I was finding that it takes me to the aspects of wonderful developments in the field of nanotechnology, or the plastic and polymers, or the degradable polymers, and so forth. Taking few examples, I will go ahead. The main theme when I was looking after of UIT, and with the objectives related to the sustainable chemistry, the aspects of thematic issues which are very close to the aspect of reviews on the different chemical concepts, your integrated approaches, and the facilitation towards the renewable energy. It was interesting. At the same time, we wanted to use the word toxicology. And the previous speaker was speaking on a very vital topic, how we can make the water, air, the purifications at the different stages. I will try to pick up from that stage and like to say that according to Paracelsus, it was said that it is the dose which is very important in toxicity. So toxicology is the science of poisons, and the toxicology is important in the way that it is the dose which differentiate between a drug and a poison. It is the route of exposure. It is how, whether it is intraperitoneal, it is muscular, it is subcutaneous, it is dermal, oral, and others. Then there is another aspect of lethal dose, LD50 or EC50 effective dose. The very another important components which come to our mind is about what is bioavailable. Sometimes we might be taking many of the components, but it is not every time that the total content goes absorbed in our body system. So we have to understand what is toxic and what is non-toxic. And when we are going for the sustainable development goals, we have to think about that SDG goals are centered on 17 different facets, and water and food, they becomes very integral part of it. How we can have the change of our lifestyle, change of the behavior, that becomes vital. And for this, if I take the examples from the different bio-based polymer composites, I find that even the plastic industry is making a rapid change in the last few decades. If I see to the plastic industry of about 75 years back and of the today, we find a marvelous change. And before I go into the details of the polymer aspect, I would also like to say very, very happy Science Week for the whole countryman at the not only at the national level, but at the global level, because now we are party in various aspects, including the OECD, GLP, GMP and others. And thus it becomes very, very important to say that Vigyan Sarvat Pujyate. And when I say Vigyan Sarvat Pujyate, we have to, in this week, I have to remember, and it is very pleasuresome to remember Sir C.V. Raman, who was well known for the Raman effect, and we want to have the scientific temper in throughout the globe, that how we can rationalize. It is not only that who studies science is a scientist, but I would say many of the mothers, many of the common man, if they perform the activities in a systematic manner using the different models, and they are trying to implement the efficacy of the simple thing, like for example curcumin, haldi, or in the south or in north or any part of the world, we find many of the even illiterates, sometimes they use the traditional medicine or the knowledge for treatment of the different things. Sometimes we have to rationalize, we have to think. As a scientist, we should have a rational thinking. We should have an understanding of the subject. We should make it through the SOP driven in the modern context, whether we are going for the good laboratory practices, good clinical practices, or good manufacturing practices. So when we use the word renewable, we have to understand that it is from the sources to the different aspects, and how we can really naturally replenish, such as crops and biomatter. And what is about the sustainable energy? We have to think that how we can have the sources that don't need to be replenished because they can never be depleted, such as sunlight and wind energy. When we think about the inclusive growth or economic or circular economy, we have to think about the environmental and economic benefits of using this renewable energy. And can we really use it in a sustainable manner? Can we use it for the benefit of science? Can we use it for the benefit of the common man and at the cost-effective manner? These are vital points, and for which UIT is in the forefront. So diversifying energy supply and reducing the dependence on imported fuels. Can we learn from these simple products? For example, in the first slide, as I have taken the lotus leaf, the nanotechnological concepts can be well understood from that. From the different feathers, from the plant to the sunlight, how we can think about. And biomimicry we can learn from the different plant and animals, that is flora and fauna. And how we can have the designing of biologically inspired components into man-made products, we can really learn through the biomimicry. You might be finding that in your early childhood, some of the children, they do the mimicry. But if even the elder persons follow the good practices, what is being followed by our butterflies and wasps, I think that is really understandable. And in the modern context, when we go for the paint and the shades, or in the market, when we are wanting to have the paint selections for the rooms and different setups or in the engineering or the defense sector, we really look forward for good type of shades, whether it is for the biocomposites or the sun mica or so forth. We find that we are looking for wonderful designs to make our existence very, very comfortable. Can we learn for all the SDG goals and relate with the green chemistry concepts? Yes, why not? And when we say green concepts, we have to think about prevention of minimization of harmful products, development of safer chemicals, energy requirements, and development of very, very sustainable, cost-effective systems, whether it is of production or processes or ultimately final products. Use of protective groups and of catalysis. In the pre-COVID, during COVID and post-COVID situations, we have been able to understand things in a different way, in a different perspective. And our war, our fight, our interactions, our knowledge should not end in 2022. We have to think about the future generations. So we have to think about how we can make the productivity and understand productivity through the simple words of preventing waste, renewable materials, how we can have the derivatization in a regular way, and degradable chemical products which can live the life at the same time suffice with the specification or guidelines of the ISO, OECD, GLP and others, and ultimately they go into the environment and degraded in a very, very useful manner. And the other points are, can we have the safe synthetic methods? And for this, I need a competent manpower. And for this competent manpower, who it will come, where it will come, and who will be that? I can say the previous speakers have well illustrated about that, taking of the points, whether it is a water purification, water understanding of the water chemistry, or the biochemistry, the physiology, and of these different reagents and chemicals. So what is the positive catalyst and the negative catalyst, and how we can have the synthesis in a very, very safe manner, using the environmental conditions which are really required with in terms of temperature, pressure, humidity, the conditions. And when we see the monitoring from the audit point of view, we really emphasize on proper documentation. If there is no proper documentation, it means no work done. And the another term which comes is plan, do, check, and act. And for this, there are certain set of standard operating procedures. And when we are going on ahead in these directions, we have to take help of the auxiliary or different type of additives, and these additives should also be safe in the case of plastic and polymers. When we have to find out which food, which basic raw material, we have to think it should be sustainable, easily accessible, and thus you might have experienced that the civilization has grown near to the rivers. But as my previous speaker was asking that what is happening in Ganges or other rivers of the country or even in the world, we are finding that most with the urbanization, industrialization, these things are ultimately going to the soil or water and they are affecting the biosystem. So we have to understand what do you mean by the really low toxicity, non-toxicity, and how we can have the chemical products. We have to learn to live with the metals. We have to learn to live with the chemicals, and these chemicals are to be safe in all the perspective. So this takes me to the wonderful aspects that how these areas are interrelated. I may not be speaking on bisphenol A or endocrine disrupting chemicals or phthalates or the air pollutants. We rejoice sometimes and we have the crackers in our hand. But what happened ultimately during Diwali? These crackers are ultimately polluting our environment. And then we go to the medical help or to pulmonary expert that our lungs are affected. So is it wise to really understand and think? In our own institute, we have a wonderful environmental monitoring division, the regulatory aspects, the nanotechnological studies, the food chemistry, and last 4 decades I have spent in this wonderful institute of CSIR, Indian Institute of Toxicology Research, and I have felt that the demand, the expectations of the customers, the expectations of the regulators are increasing day by day. And thus we have to understand what is industrialization, true meaning. What is the shifting from the rural area to the urban or from urban to the rural? Because now we are living in urban areas, but we are in the end of the week or end of the month or during the vacations, we look forward for an opportunity where we can go for the rural areas and have the utilization of our farmhouses. We want to really depend on the animals, on whether it is the one animal or the other, and how we are thinking that can we make the use of the different type of animals, different breeds of animals, different speciations of our chemicals, and also our food style to the betterment of the human life. And this takes me to the issue of public policies, strategies, defense strategies, and ultimately at the center about the sustainability in taking into consideration of the economical aspect and technological. Here I need the help of the different persons of IIT, IIMs and others. Here I need the help of the economists. Here I need the public policy personals, journalists, and also the mass communicators who can take all the things into the masses. So this takes me to the issue that really we can have the government system or non-government system around the world to become unified in taking action toward the sustainable development. And when we see about this wonderful sign, it gives me an impression of recycle, reduce, recover, redesign, and others. And how we can do, there are multiple modes of it. And when we have to think about in the perspective of a positive thinker or a leadership and management aspect, we have to think about the different type of situations which are happening, and as I said earlier, how we can learn from the nature. And there is an aspect of protection, preservation, communication and marking, and how we can have the packaging, which is the silent salesman. We have to think about the progress. It does not come from in a day, but it needs the combat plastic pollution in case of oceans. We find that we are making a lot of development in the plastic and polymer. Sometimes we say it is a boon, sometimes as a bane. But ultimately what we are finding that our oceans, our water bodies are adversely affected because of the plastic pollution. And the number of microplastics, the issue of microplastics, the fine particles, they are becoming a cause of concern at the global level. We need the monitoring to management. And when we see about monitoring and management, we have to understand about the policies, the regulatory guidelines, and who has to frame the guidelines, and are these all regulatory guidelines really implementable? And the industry is finding a way out or way in. So the industry should be a partner to design and to understand and to implement it. We can't be on one sector and we can think as different practices. So all these things become interconnected for the betterment of science, and we can learn from the wonderful plant like pitcher plant. And we has to see that how these different compositions, whether it is the utilization of hyphenated techniques like SAM, TAM, LCMS, GCMS for characterization, and we can understand the real structure on the 3D systems also. In the modern context, there is a application of the artificial intelligence, the drone concepts, the big data, and this helps us to understand the business practices which can be adopted in the next century or so, and so that our future generation can understand what is the competitiveness, what is the basic intricacies between these things. It is not from the physical or material science, but the things has to be undergoing through the environmental consciousness. When I say environmental consciousness, I have to understand about the basic ethics. We used to learn about moral science and the ethics. When we have to help a old person or a person who is crossing a road, or those who are living in the different boroughs, what we have to think about is about providing certain food material to these creatures which are striving hard during the rainy season. And we learn from them that how we can have a social networking, understanding of the facts. Each of the facilities can be shared with each other. I'm trying to relate the human behavior with toxicology and the natural implications of all this, because ultimately we have to think about the flora and fauna which are living in the oceans or the rivers. There is an issue of electronic waste. There is an issue of the simple item like straws. the plastic straws. Now we are wanting the food materials, the packaging materials, even the different type of items. But on the other side, we are finding that the growth of plastic is increasing. So once we say it is bad, but why we are using in cosmetics, in defense, in agriculture, packaging, so it becomes an issue. Whether it is for drinking water, the drinking water bottle, whether it is for a child or a school going boy or for the adult like you and me, we find that we have the concept, we know about the different technologies, but they can be patented. Similarly, there is the issue of plastic. We can have the safe plastics, and these plastic waste management needs the concept and idea of inventors and out of box thinking, so we can ultimately emerge innovative business models which may include the cutting edge technology, blockchain and mobile technologies to connect participants in a plastic recycling supply chain with aim to prevent plastic from entering the world oceans. When I say world oceans, we have to understand what can be done, how it can be done for the understanding of the subject matter. Is it the COVID is only about treatment? No, it is about sanitation, hygiene. So the same thing is reflected in our SDG goals. And I will say the disease pattern may change, the disease name may change, but we have to understand how we can have a better and clean and healthy environment so that we are not going to the ocean, beach and saying that these items are on the side. If we are going for the monitoring aspect, we have to see that how the state of art techniques are being used. So what we need in a positive perspective, that government and scientific communities throughout the world should recognize the practice of green chemistry and engineering, not only to lead a cleaner and more sustainable earth, but also is economically beneficial with many positive social impacts. And this need evaluation, performance monitoring, management, and this takes us to the aspect of performance and other things. So these things there are voluminous literature, but still there is a way forward. When the word we write impossible, if you bifurcate, it says I am possible. And when the previous speaker was asking about some questions and was responding to it, I will say that everything is feasible if we have a positive approach. If we have a sustenance, we have a very good competent manpower. They have to be directed in the right direction so that they can give the fruits of their hard work. And this takes to the smart, intelligent, active packaging in the different sectors. And this is to be regulatory tested, strategically tested for the safe packaging at the different fronts. The different design modules are coming up, but these design modules should be sustainable. They should imbibe with the principles, the 12 principles of green chemistry, and they should understand not only the engineering from IITs, but they should understand what is the customer requirement. Because in the most of the guidelines, it is said the customer satisfaction becomes very vital. So we can understand the things from the bio-inspired concepts and use the concept of the green catalysis, the environmentally friendly product, green and renewable resources for making the biomimicry. And this takes me to a wonderful sustainable future. Think about the not only as a one material of plastic, but I would say about the water. We are getting the different type of systems for monitoring, for diseases, for monitoring in agriculture, in defense. Nowadays, you are hearing in the news and you are well aware what is happening in the international scenario about the wars. The war is not a solution. The war, we should learn how to think about, exchange our views and make our each things friendly. It is not by the wars the solution will come. It is sometimes it becomes though we do not want, but it becomes very, very essential. I am not in a mood to say that we should fight for each other. We should love each other. We should imbibe good things and we should make our sustainable, better future. And for this, there is a need of advancement in pharma sector, agriculture sectors, toxicological aspect, the paint and pigment, the packaging sector, because the packaging of food is something different, packaging of medicines is different. The requirement of packaging of water may be different. So we have to think about the requirement of WHO, the ISO guidelines, the Bureau of Indian Standard guidelines in our own country, and in the FSSAI guidelines, how far we are complying. Are they really sufficient? Are the guidelines more than sufficient, or are there some changes needed? And what are those changes? Who will make the change and who will implement it? It is you and me. So we should not just put all the fingers towards the other direction. We should think this is my responsibility. So I want to say the rights and duties go together. We should not say that a man is of only science or art or other field, because now the world is thinking in a different perspective, and we have to understand that even the cleaning, the dry cleaning is using the concept of nano concepts. How about the getting the good technologies in water sector? We depend on the nanotechnological approaches. In the food sector, for the biosensors or for RFID or for indicators, whether the food is really good or bad, we have to understand and depend on the good food technologies. So we have to understand that without the food, our generation, our defense persons can't live on the Leh and Ladakh or Kashmir or other areas or at the global fronts. So we have to understand about the innovations and importance, which become again a key area of the R&D in the modern perspective. We have to think about from the different models. For example, in ecotoxicological models, we learn from the Daphnia, from the Drosophila, from C. elegans, and also there are major developments in the field of polymeric field where we are bio-inspired. And these manufacturing and applications go a long way for making the interdisciplinary application of the biomaterial science. So it is, we are learning on one point at the marine region or in the terrestrial regions. We have to think about the sustainability. I gave a positive picture, and also a field of your leadership and motivation. These birds are also telling you how we can have the placement of our own self, how we can go ahead, and what can be the way to lead toward a positive growth when we have to think about the clean and green environment, the oceans as well as the sky. We have to think about the wonderful seasons of where we can find the peacocks in a dancing mood. It is not the dance just as a indication, it gives you a satisfaction that I am happy with the environment. I am happy with the changes. I am happy with the positive growth. So these biospheres, the civilizations, they take me to a better. It is understanding this toxicology, a very, very crucial and a very typical science in a simple language. I would say in the way that even for alcohol, alcohol is vital in case of homeopathy. In the allopathy and others, we are using ethanol for the different perspective. But when we see our normal life and other things, we find that some of the persons are using it for different, as a part of joy. But it is not a part of joy. It is, they are giving a material to the body, which is changing the physiological system and the biochemistry and leading to the some negative points in the society. So we have to understand how the philosophy, the naturopathy, the science, and the psychology make the changes. Whether it is the PTFE type of materials, bisphenol A, or endocrine disrupting chemicals, or the other heavy metals which may be in the water and other places. So we have to understand the quality of the materials, whether it is in the health card of the soil or health card of an individual. So we have to think about the electronic and other changes which are going for making interaction more and more better. And it is not just a simple molecule. For example, with the tetrahedral structure of carbon and diamond, we find the different type and allotropes which are there. So we have to understand what is allotropy, how the things are going on. If I have to understand the water molecule, it is not only the simple H2O. We have to understand the bonding between it, that is the 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, and the covalent bonding. Even the covalent bonding tells us about the various good natures, and it is intermixed with the natural fibers when we are planning for the good materials to go in the development of bio-based or food products. The food should be healthy, quality product, and our life should become better and better. When we have to depend on all these things, we can follow the different type of guidelines, but we should understand what these guidelines say and how they are different, why they are important, why they were framed, and who will implement it and how it will implement. So there are different how, why, when, where, and all these things are the basic part which we teach to our students in the Jigyasa programs or in the EPIC programs or science motivation programs, but it or equally responsible at the higher level to understand about the European Union guidelines, ISO, FPA, WHO, FDA, and others. It is not only during the COVID that I have to take heed of the ICMR and WHO, but in the day-to-day life, we have to understand what is the understanding of the sanitation, hygiene. If we are maintaining the hygiene and good environment in our day-to-day practices, we will be leading to a good health, and this type of data is very important for mass dissemination and incentives, whether it is a part of the CSR lab or corporate social responsibility. These two things may be different, but now they are being interlinked in the extended producer responsibility when we are producing the plastic and polymers. So when we are saying about the EPR issues and others or intellectual properties, we have to also think about what is the circular economy, and not only circular economy of one material of plastic, but in the various contexts. So this takes me to the issue of that are these testing facilities available and how costly they are, or they are affordable by the common industrialists, and we have to make them costly, or they have to be made really cost effective. So there is two aspects. Is it really cost effective? Because material scientists need the evaluation of the product and understand. For this, we have very good established facility in the country, which is on the GMP, GLC, GPC, GLP mode and other things. In our own institute, we have the GLP facilities and NABL accreditation, so you can take the advantage of it. So I will request all the participants and othering that they can use the CSIR facilities, DST, DBT, ICMR and others. We have a good strength. Only the thing is that how we can make access, and the online and offline mode both are available for taking the advantage. This takes me again to the wonderful pictures and understanding of the environment. It is not the mango from Maliabad of Lucknow, but I will say the very good varieties are from the various parts of the world, and they are inter-exchange. And you find that now even our own country, they are making efforts that how we can reach within a short span with quality as well as minimum time and minimum cost. So this will help us toward the sustainability and good growth. And if I have to make a sustainable growth, we have to think about the positivity in the different perspective and not to pollute our environment. The pollution of environment will ultimately come back to us, and it will lead to the situations which will harm us. So we have to have the good packaging solutions for whether it is for perfume or fragrances, and the fragrance will come not only from that, it is your thought process also combined with your fragrances. So your thought process, your understanding, your good food habit, what you intake will also make your approach towards life different. So it is a biotechnological approaches, and thus when I get the students from biotechnological background, I try to educate them that it is not only chemistry. We have to understand how we can imbibe the concepts in the biotechnological or biochemistry and other aspect. They have to understand these things for making the sustainable goals achievable by country, and we have to improve our status in the SDG goals levels. The Niti Aayog, which we say, or education sector, they were adversely affected, the education of the children, but Niti Aayog or the Higher Education Commission, they are all making efforts to make it more and more viable, more educational and more really practically possible, whether it is through the offline and online modes. So we have to understand how we can come closer. I once again invite on behalf of CSIR-IITR or CSIR family to take the advantage of all the science in India, and the scientific temper should be increased at the global level. And let us make India as Atmanirbhar, whether it is a vision of our Prime Minister or President or the heads of the organization of ICMR, ICAR, CSIR or any others. I would say they all have a one passion, that to see the world growing in a positive way. With all this, happy Science Day, which falls on 28th, and a wonderful life ahead. And thank you for your patience hearing. If there are any queries or questions, you can give to the organizers. Fortunately, the organizers were very, very comfortable with us on the different fronts. They try to have their networking, and I want to take this step again as a combined effort from all the participants to have a better understanding in the future and take the world towards Vasudev Kutumbakam. Dhanyavad. Thank you a
Thank
lot.
you.
Pranam.
Thank you, Professor Vinod. It was very nice consolidation of the
Thank you a lot.
futuristic vision. Very nice. And you also emphasize the need of the hour, sustainability, and how we can approach. Um, may ask the participants if you have any question, you can post it or you can ask participants. Any comments?
Yes, there can be questions, or you can give in the chat box and which can be shared to me.
Yes. Okay. If there are no more questions from the participants,
Thank
this
you
was
to
a
each
very
one of you, equally, and
Ram sir,
all the
yeah, yeah.
once again I want to tell some important
Sure, sure.
news
Go ahead.
regarding the VP Sharma sir. Sir, actually VP Sharma sir asked me to give a time for the oral presentation in the section. So when I am a little bit busy with that time, I can't able to understand how he may give the details related to sustainable chemistry. So laterally, when I am after 20 days, I think so, right, sir?
yes.
Yes. After 20 days, when I am going through the same resume, same abstract, why can't you give it in the special lecture as like this? So when I requested him that as per that consent schedule, she accepted this one. So the thing is, we are very edge to the Science Day celebration. So after getting this much scientific effects in their career, he give the abstract into the oral presentation. So that's an inspiring science which I got it from the Sharma sir. So really it is inspired to me, sir. So in this want to convey to the scientific peoples. So based on that, whatever the height we are going, so we must to be polite in the science. It will enrich and it will develop our society. That's I learned from him. That's a inspire the message from my side.
Thank you a lot, sir, for all your
Yeah.
comments, and we are together in our front in future. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir. Sir Ram, sir. Yes, sir. Very thankful to you also, sir,
You're
for
most welcome.
leading
And
this
it was very
section.
nice you are doing this wonderful online seminar. Good. Best wishes. Thank you.